Marcus always arrived at the office at 8:30 on the dot. Not because our office opened at 8:30, it opened at 9, but because he liked being the first one in after me. He liked the optics of diligence. He liked being seen, even by the one person who was always already there. He would stop at the coffee station and spend 5 minutes making a pour-over. He was meticulous about his coffee, used a gooseneck kettle and a specific grind coarseness he had explained to me once at length, and then walked down the hall to his corner office with the confidence of a man who believed everything was under control. On the last Monday of May, he followed this routine exactly. He greeted our receptionist, Carla, by name, and asked about her weekend. He made his coffee with the gooseneck kettle. He picked up his phone as he turned toward the hall. He didn't notice the two men waiting in the conference room until he was 3 steps past the door. One of them was Gerald Fitch. The other was a special agent from the FBI's White-Collar Crime Division, Nashville Field Office. A methodical, soft-spoken man who had been building economic crimes cases for 16 years. Behind them, on the conference room wall, was a timeline, printed, laminated, pinned. Every transaction, every LLC, every date, every dollar amount, laid out in the precise, unambiguous grammar of federal evidence. I was standing at the end of the hallway. Marcus turned and looked at me. He had his coffee in both hands. His face went through several expressions in a span of seconds. Confusion first, then the rapid internal calculation of someone trying to understand what they're looking at. Then something that I can only describe as the expression of a man who finally understands that the trap closed much earlier than he had thought. Not the moment of the trap, earlier, the moment he first looked at me and decided I would never notice. "Daniel." "Don't," I said, one word, quietly, no shaking, no rage. Just that single syllable with the full weight of everything behind it. He stood there a moment longer, holding his coffee. And then Gerald said his name and indicated the conference room chair, and the moment was over. I walked to my own office and closed the door, and sat down at my desk and looked out at the Cumberland River for a long time. I didn't feel triumph. I want to be honest about that. I had expected to feel something triumphant, and I didn't. What I felt was something closer to grief. Not for Marcus, exactly, for the years, for the person I had believed he was. For every conversation we'd had where I thought we were building something together, and he was building something else entirely. Marcus was escorted from the building at 8:47 a.m. Our employees were not yet in the office. I had made sure of that. No spectacle, no audience, no moment for anyone to feel they had to choose a side or process something in real time. Just process. Clean, private, unambiguous. The federal indictment was filed that afternoon. 3 counts: wire fraud, money laundering, breach of fiduciary duty. His attorney called Gerald 3 times in the following week. The answer was the same each time. We were cooperating fully with federal authorities, and we had nothing to negotiate. Marcus Webb eventually pleaded guilty to 2 of the 3 counts. The sentencing hearing was in November. He stood in a federal courtroom and said he was sorry, and his attorney gave a prepared statement about his character and his family, and the factors that had led him to make the decisions he made. And the federal judge listened to all of it with the expression of a man who has heard all of it before. 11 years. Federal prison in Georgia. Full restitution of $3,412,000, plus interest and legal fees to be paid over a court-structured schedule from any assets he retained or would earn upon release. I attended the sentencing. I sat in the 3rd row and watched it all from beginning to end. Marcus looked at me once when they let him out. I held his gaze until he looked away. That was the last time I saw him.
The weeks after Marcus's arrest were the second hardest of my life. The hardest, the 3 weeks of knowing and pretending, were already behind me. The Nashville Business Press ran the story on Tuesday morning. Co-founder of Callaway Property Partners indicted on federal fraud charges. There were follow-up pieces in the real estate trade publications, in the Tennessee Business Journals, in a national commercial real estate outlet that I had been featured in 3 years earlier for a different, much better reason. I gave one statement through Gerald, carefully worded, factual, and brief. We had discovered the fraud through our own internal processes. We had cooperated fully with federal law enforcement, and we remained committed to our clients and our obligations. Then I went silent on the subject publicly. I did not grant interviews. I did not appear on podcasts. I did not litigate my version of events in the media. What I did was work. The first thing I did, the week of the arrest, was call every single one of our 58 clients. Personally, not through a PR firm, not through a form letter, not through an announcement. One by one, I called them, and I told them what had happened, what we were doing about it, and what it meant, and didn't mean, for their investments and agreements with us. Some of those calls were 20 minutes long. Some were an hour. I answered every question directly and honestly, including the ones I didn't enjoy answering. 51 clients stayed. 5 who left initially called back within 2 months to renew their agreements after watching how we handled the aftermath. 2 left permanently, and I was not angry about it. Their trust had been damaged, and they had the right to make that choice. I thanked them genuinely. I promoted Patrice Odom to CFO with a meaningful compensation increase and complete autonomy over financial controls and reporting structures. I told her that her job was to tell me what I didn't want to hear, and that I would never hold that against her. She told me she was going to hold me to that. I told her I was counting on it. I hired Dara Simmons as our new COO. She came from a commercial real estate firm in Atlanta, had a reputation for being brilliant, honest, and occasionally uncomfortable to work with because of how directly she communicated. That last quality was the one I valued most. I had learned, at significant cost, the price of surrounding myself with people who told me what was comfortable rather than what was true. I brought in an outside board of advisors, 3 experienced professionals from adjacent industries, none of them connected to my social world, all vetted carefully and independently. They met quarterly and had the authority to request any financial records, any operational data, any information they deemed relevant. No restrictions, no curated presentations. Everything. The recovery of the stolen funds happened through 2 channels. The restitution order attached to Marcus's conviction, which created a structured repayment plan from his assets, and civil litigation against the shell entities and their associated bank accounts, which recovered a portion of what remained. In total, we recovered approximately 80% of the stolen $3,412,000 over the following 18 months. The remaining 20% I absorbed as a business loss, which was painful and real and ultimately manageable. What I could not recover, and was not trying to, was the 8 years of partnership I had believed in. That was simply gone. The best I could do was build what came next on a foundation that didn't have the same vulnerabilities. And that is what I did.
Sophie Rose Calloway is, and has always been, the reason I get out of bed. Not in the way people say it sometimes casually, meaning their life has purpose. I mean it literally. On the mornings in those early months, when I woke up in my office on the leather couch and the weight of everything was the first thing that arrived, before light or coffee or any other mercy. On those mornings, the thing that got me vertical was the knowledge that Sophie would be there for our Wednesday pickup, or our Sunday morning, or our Tuesday evening dinner, and that I needed to be functional and present for her, even if I wasn't particularly either of those things for myself. I had made decisions about what to tell her that followed a simple logic. Tell the truth calibrated to what she could hold. She was 6. She couldn't hold the full truth, but she deserved truth she could hold. I told her that Mom and Dad were going to live in different houses for a while, and that it was not anything she had done, and that both of us loved her completely, and that love doesn't change when houses change. I said the part about it not being her fault multiple times on multiple occasions, unprompted, because I had read, and I believe this to be true, that children of that age absorb blame for things they had nothing to do with and carry it quietly, sometimes for years. One Wednesday morning in June, I was making scrambled eggs and she was at the kitchen counter, chin on her hands, watching me cook. She said, "Daddy, are you sad?" I put down the spatula. I turned around and looked at her, really looked at her, at this serious, perceptive 6-year-old who could already see through me better than most adults. "Yeah," I said, "sometimes I'm sad, but I'm also okay. Both things can be true at the same time." She thought about this, chewing her lower lip the way she does when she's processing something. "Like how I was sad when my hamster died, but also happy because we got to bury him in the garden," she said. "Exactly like that," I said. "Okay," she said. And then, "Are the eggs almost done?" Kids are our best teachers. They don't hold things too long. They let something settle and then they move forward. I took that as instruction. The divorce proceedings lasted 8 months. Michelle and I were, in the actual execution of it, almost ceremonially civil. I believe this was because we both understood, separately probably, that the thing we most needed to protect was Sophie's ability to have two parents who could be in the same room. We settled on shared custody with Sophie's primary residence at our house, since Michelle was relocating to Memphis to be near her sister and wanted to give Sophie continuity in her school and neighborhood. Our legal teams negotiated the asset division without dramatics. It was, by all external measures, a reasonable divorce. The question of Michelle's legal exposure in the fraud case was handled entirely by federal prosecutors, independent of me. I was asked twice if I would like to provide a statement regarding her character and the nature of her involvement. Both times I declined. Not to protect her, and not to harm her. I declined because I genuinely didn't know the complete truth of what she had or hadn't known, and because I was not going to give a statement I wasn't certain was fully accurate, and because Sophie was going to grow up with this woman as her mother, and whatever that future looked like, I wasn't going to make it harder. Michelle was not prosecuted. The investigators determined that there was insufficient evidence to prove she had knowingly participated in the fraud, as opposed to being a co-signatory who had not exercised due diligence. Those are different legal standards. The outcome felt right to me, in the end. Not because I had forgiven her. Forgiveness was a project I was still many months from beginning, but because Sophie deserved a mother who wasn't facing federal charges. Some things you do not for yourself. You do them for the 8-year project you're most proud of. Marcus's girlfriend, Lexi, was charged as a co-conspirator based on text message evidence recovered during the federal investigation. The messages showed that she had known about Pinnacle Advisory Group, one of the 4 shell entities, and had accepted a $48,000 wire transfer described in the fake documentation as a consulting retainer for services she never provided. She was 26 years old. Her attorney argued inexperience and manipulation by a significantly older and more sophisticated partner. The prosecutors were skeptical but pragmatic. She cooperated fully, turned over every device and record she had access to, and ultimately received 3 years of supervised probation and a forfeiture order for the $48,000. I don't think about Lexi much. She made a poor choice about the kind of man she trusted with her future, and that choice had consequences. And I believe she will probably make different choices going forward. I don't wish her anything. She's just a person who got caught up in someone else's damage. What I think about, the thing that took me longest to find the right relationship with, was the sheer ordinariness of how all of this had hidden itself. Marcus had sat across from me at dinner and asked about my daughter's soccer game while running a fraud operation against my company. He had given a speech at a conference I organized about the importance of integrity in business partnerships. He had once, I remembered, spent 2 hours talking me out of a business decision because he thought it crossed an ethical line. And in retrospect, I have no idea whether that was genuine or whether it was strategic or whether even Marcus knew the difference by that point. The thing about a sophisticated deceiver is that they often deceive themselves first. They construct a story in which their actions are justified, or temporary, or victimless, or compensatory, Some narrative that lets them live with what they're doing. I don't know what Marcus's narrative was. I probably never will. But I know that whatever it was a lie he had been telling himself for so long that it had become, in some functional sense, his reality. And that his reality and mine had been occupying the same space, the same conferences, the same conference rooms, the same kitchen table, without ever actually touching. That is the thing about betrayal that no one tells you. It doesn't feel like an ambush. It feels, in retrospect, like a long series of moments you chose to explain away. Moments where something didn't quite fit, and you filed it under probably nothing, because the alternative was too heavy to carry. The lesson I kept: people show you who they are. Not always loudly, but always eventually. And your job, the job I hadn't done well enough, is to be honest with yourself about what you're seeing. Here is what I lost. I lost a marriage, 8 years, a house full of accumulated life, a version of the future I had spent time imagining in some detail, family vacations to places we hadn't been yet, Sophie's school plays and soccer tournaments, growing old together in the Tennessee hills with the particular companionship that comes from building a life alongside someone. I lost the specific comfort of someone who knows your history because they were there for it. That kind of companionship is not easily replaced, and I'm not sure it should be replaced quickly, and I have made peace with both of those facts. I lost a best friend. Or more accurately, I lost the person I had believed Marcus Webb to be. The actual Marcus Webb, the one who had been systematically stealing from me for 22 months while attending my daughter's birthday parties. That person I did not lose. I ejected him. The distinction matters. I lost some certainty. Not the harmful kind. Not the false certainty that the world is fundamentally safe and that the people who love you will always behave accordingly. I lost the naive version of that, which I understand now was always more wish than fact. What replaced it was not paranoia, but discernment. A quieter, more earned way of reading people. Slower to trust, which is not the same as refusing to trust. Warmer and colder at the same time. I lost some sleep, months of it. I lost the ability to walk through certain rooms of my former house without the specific weight of what happened there. I lost the uncomplicated version of who I had been before. The man who had never had to think about whether his partner might be his enemy, who had never had to sit across from his wife and perform normalcy while holding evidence that changed everything. Here is what I kept. I kept my company. Callaway Property Partners emerged from the crisis damaged and then rebuilt, and the rebuilt version was better. Better governed, better staffed, better equipped to handle adversity, with a reputation for transparency that had paradoxically grown during the scandal because of the deliberate, honest way we managed it. By the end of the following year, our portfolio had grown from $68 million to $91 million in managed assets. We hired 4 people. We won 3 new client relationships from firms that specifically cited our handling of the fraud case as a reason they trusted us. I kept my integrity. Not intact, exactly. Nothing goes through what I went through completely intact, but preserved. I had not done a single dishonest, retaliatory, or legally inappropriate thing in the entire 18 months from discovery to resolution. Every action had been considered, documented, and conducted through proper channels. I had been tested in ways I had never anticipated being tested, and I had not become someone I didn't recognize. I kept my father's voice in my head, that compass. A man's only as rich as the trust people put in him. And the follow-up lesson, the one he hadn't needed to say out loud but that I learned anyway, the trust that matters most is the trust you deserve. Not the trust people give you before they know you, the trust that survives knowing you. I kept Sophie. That is the keepings that matters most. Every Wednesday, every other weekend, every Tuesday evening, every Sunday morning of scrambled eggs. Every school play where I sat in the 3rd row and watched her forget her line and remember it and look at me with relief when she did. Every drawing she showed me, every question she asked me, every moment of ordinary life that felt, in the aftermath of everything I'd been through, like the most extraordinary gift I had ever been given. It is a Saturday morning in October, and I am standing in the kitchen of a house I bought 8 months ago. It's smaller than the one I used to have. 3 bedrooms, a yard with a substantial oak tree that Sophie claimed as hers in the first hour she spent here, A kitchen with large windows that put so much light into the room at breakfast time that I still don't turn on the overheads, even in October. The neighborhood is quiet. There's a coffee shop 2 blocks away where they know my order. There's a park 4 blocks away where Sophie and I have spent a significant number of Saturday afternoons. I am making coffee. Sophie is at the kitchen table behind me, drawing something elaborate in a large notebook. She has become, in the past year, very serious about drawing. Not just horses now, but horses in landscapes, horses in motion, horses in winter and summer and rain. The walls of her bedroom here are covered in the ones she's most proud of. I have framed 3 of them. The business is good. Better than good. We closed a deal last month that is the largest in the company's history. A mixed-use development partnership in the Germantown neighborhood that will take 3 years to build and represents the most complex project I have ever managed. Patris is the best CFO I have ever worked with. Dara occasionally makes me uncomfortable by being exactly as honest as I asked her to be, and I am grateful for it every time. I have 3 clients I've acquired in the past 6 months who specifically sought us out because of how we handled the fraud case. One of them told me over lunch that he looked at how a company behaves in a crisis as the only reliable indicator of how they'll treat you when something goes wrong. I told him that was probably the most useful thing anyone had said to me in 2 years. I still have Gerald Fitch's number. I call him occasionally, not for emergencies, but because somewhere along the way he became a friend, the kind you make in the middle of hard things when you find out someone has good judgment and straight values and a dry sense of humor. I have made several friendships like that in the past 2 years. They are different from the friendships I made before, quieter, better founded, built on a slower kind of knowing. Marcus has been in federal custody for 14 months. I think about him less than I expected to. Not because what he did no longer matters, but because the space I used to reserve for Marcus Webb has been repurposed. It is full of better things now, denser things, things that are actually mine. Last spring I was asked to speak at a business ethics symposium at Vanderbilt, the same campus where Marcus and I met, where we were young and ambitious and certain that the future was a thing we would build together. I stood at the podium and spoke for 40 minutes about trust, about governance, about what it costs and what it builds and what happens when it is violated, and what it takes to survive that violation without becoming someone smaller. A young man in the front row, 22, 23, with the nervous energy of someone at the very beginning of everything, raised his hand at the end and asked, "How do you know when to trust someone?" I thought about that question for a moment, about all the times I had asked it, in different forms, over the past 2 years, about the answers I had tried and discarded, about what I had actually learned. "Watch what they do when it costs them something," I said. "Anyone can be loyal when it's easy. When loyalty is free, it doesn't tell you much. Character is what shows up when being honest or being fair or keeping their word requires them to give something up. Watch for that. And when you see it, when you see someone pay the price for their integrity, remember it. That's the person worth trusting." He wrote it down. I hope he carries it. Behind me, Sophie has gone quiet. "Dad," she says. "Yeah, Bug." "Can we go to the park after breakfast?" I pour 2 glasses of orange juice and turn around. "Yeah," I say, "we can go to the park." She smiles. It's quick and complete, the way children smile when they haven't yet learned to edit themselves, when joy arrives without negotiation. She tucks her head back down to her horses. I sit across from her with my coffee. The October light comes in through the big windows. The neighborhood is quiet. Somewhere 2 blocks away, someone is walking a dog. Somewhere far south of here, in a federal correctional facility in Georgia, Marcus Webb is beginning another day of 11 years. And here in this kitchen, in this house that is mine, my daughter is drawing horses in a world she believes is basically good and safe and full of possibility. I intend to keep it that way for as long as I am able. Some things, when they are taken from you, cannot be recovered. The specific weight of a particular life at a particular time, the exact texture of who you were before, that doesn't come back. It becomes something else. You become someone who has been through it, and that someone is not who you were before, but some things, the things that are truly load-bearing, the things you built right, On honest foundations with good materials, those things bend, they bruise, they go through the fire, and they hold. I received a letter 3 months ago. No return address. The handwriting was careful, and even the penmanship of a man who has hours to fill and nothing to fill them with but deliberate effort. I'm not going to quote it here, because some things belong only to the people involved in them. But I will say what it contained. It contained an acknowledgement, not a legal apology. Marcus had already made those in a courtroom for the record, with his attorney at his elbow and the weight of a sentencing memorandum hanging over every word. This was a different thing. This was a man in a quiet room with nothing left to protect, writing to the person he had most wronged and saying so without any practical benefit to himself. Saying that he understood, in the silence of a federal correctional facility, what he had actually done. Not just the legal definition of it. The human definition. He said he did not expect forgiveness. He said he was not writing to ask for it. He said he was writing because there are things that get louder in the absence of all the noise we use to drown them out. I read it twice. I sat with it for a while. And then I put it in the drawer of my desk at home, in the folder where I keep the things I haven't resolved yet. Not the things I've let go, and not the things I'm holding on to, but the things that need more time before I know where they belong. I didn't respond. Not because I had nothing to say. I had, in fact, quite a lot I could say. But I had learned over the past 2 years that some silences are a kind of response in themselves. That there are moments when the most powerful thing you can do is simply hold your ground. Not advance, not retreat, just hold. And let the weight of what happened sit where it belongs. Not on your shoulders, on the shoulders of the person who chose to create it. That too, my father taught me, not in so many words. Never in so many words. But in the way he moved through his life, with his rough hands and his quiet voice and his absolute unwavering fidelity to the things he said and the people he loved and the work he showed up to do. He is 71 years old. He tends his garden in Harlan County and loses his reading glasses and watches the fireflies come out over the hills in the evenings. He has never been a wealthy man. He has never been a man that the world would describe as powerful. But he is the most trusted man I know. And in the end, I think that is the only measure of a life that actually holds up to scrutiny. A man's only as rich as the